I never got to know Leslie Howard privately, that I worked with my first leading man in Intermezzo. There are many like that.
America's perfect movie star had a dirty secret. While playing saints and nuns on screen, Ingrid Bergman was actually sleeping with famous men behind her husband's back. The shocking affair that destroyed her career wasn't even her first. Before the Italian director who got her pregnant, she had secret hotel meetings with Gary Cooper and dangerous nights with a famous war photographer. The truth about Ingrid Bergman is way more darker than anyone imagined. Ingrid Bergman was born on August 29, 1915, in Stockholm, Sweden. Her father, Justus Samuel Bergman, was a Swedish artist and photographer. Her mother, Frida Henrietta Augusta Louise Adler, was from Kiel, Germany. The couple had already suffered heartbreak before Ingrid's birth, losing 2 infant children. When they finally had her, they named her after Princess Ingrid of Sweden. She grew up speaking both Swedish and German. Every summer, she traveled to Germany to visit her mother's family. These trips helped her stay connected to her German roots. Later in life, this would become important as she acted in different languages. But even though she had a cultured upbringing, her early years were shaped by loss. Her father loved photography and captured Ingrid's childhood in countless photos and home movies. She later joked that she was perhaps the most photographed child in Scandinavia. He even built a small movie projector so they could watch films together. These moments sparked Ingrid's love for performing. She enjoyed dressing up and acting out scenes, unaware that this hobby would later define her life. Tragedy struck early. When Ingrid was 2.5 years old, her mother died from illness. The loss left her feeling empty, something she carried for the rest of her life. Her father did everything he could to support her. He encouraged her love for the arts and even arranged voice lessons for 3 years. But just as Ingrid began to find comfort again, she lost him too. When she was 12, Justus died of stomach cancer. After his death, Ingrid was sent to live with her Aunt Ellen. 6 months later, Ellen died of heart disease. Once again, Ingrid had to move. This time, she lived with another aunt and uncle who already had 5 children. In the middle of all this change, Ingrid turned to acting as an escape. She would put on her mother's old dresses and perform plays in her father's empty studio. Even though she was shy, she dreamed of becoming an actress. At 17, she worked hard to earn a scholarship to the Royal Dramatic Theatre School in Stockholm. This was the same school that had once accepted Greta Garbo. In 1932, Ingrid Bergman stepped onto a film set for the first time. She was just 17 years old and had no speaking lines. Her role in Landskamp was small, just a girl standing in line. But to her, it felt like walking on sacred ground. Within months, she was cast in Et Brot, A Crime, by Sigfrid Sieverts. Her time at the Academy didn't last long. During her first summer break, Sweden's top film studio, Svensk Filmindustri, offered her a contract. The decision was clear. School could wait, but her career couldn't. By 1935, she had left the Academy behind and was acting full-time. Audiences were drawn to her natural presence on screen. There was something different about her, something real. That presence became undeniable in 1936 when she starred in Intermezzo, directed by Gustav Melander. She played Anita, a piano teacher who falls in love with a married violinist, played by Gösta Ekman. The role demanded subtlety. She had to show deep emotions without overacting. Melander later admitted that while he had written Intermezzo for her, its success belonged entirely to her performance. Swedish audiences loved the film. So did someone on the other side of the world. Hollywood producer David O. Selznick saw Intermezzo and knew he had discovered something special. He sent a representative to Sweden right away, securing both the rights to remake the film and Bergman's involvement in it. In 1939, she starred in the Hollywood remake Intermezzo, a love story, alongside Leslie Howard. At the time, Hollywood studios often forced actresses to undergo dramatic makeovers, plucked eyebrows, restyled hairlines, layers of makeup. Selznick refused. He knew Bergman's natural beauty and understated acting would set her apart, and they did. The film was a success, introducing her to audiences far beyond Sweden. Hollywood had found its next great star. But just before her American debut, she had taken a detour, one that would later become a source of regret. In 1938, she signed a contract with UFA, Germany's leading film studio. She traveled to Berlin to star in Die vier Gesellen, The Four Companions, a romantic comedy about four women starting a graphic design agency. On paper, it was a light-hearted film. Behind the scenes, it was something else entirely. Bergman later admitted that she had been naive. She hadn't fully understood the political situation when she accepted the role. Once in Berlin, she quickly realized the dangers around her. UFA operated under strict Nazi control. Many actors had to align themselves with the party to succeed. Bergman wanted no part of that. Her performance in Die vier Gesellen was well received, but one person was unimpressed: Adolf Hitler. According to his Luftwaffe adjutant, Nikolaus von Below, Hitler watched the film privately on September 15, 1938. It was the same day British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain arrived at Berghof to negotiate with him. Hitler dismissed the movie with two simple words: "Not good." Bergman wasted no time. She left Germany immediately after filming ended, cutting all ties with UFA. The experience taught her a lesson about the industry and about the world. Ingrid Bergman's journey in Hollywood began in 1939 with Intermezzo, a love story. This was her first American film, produced by David O. Selznick and directed by Gregory Retoff. It was a remake of a 1936 Swedish film where she had played the same role. She portrayed Anita Hoffman, a piano accompanist who falls in love with a married violinist played by Leslie Howard. Her performance stood out because of its emotional depth and sincerity. The film's haunting score by Heinz Provost added to its romantic tension, but Bergman's natural presence was what truly captivated audiences. From the moment she arrived in Hollywood, she challenged the industry's expectations. Selznick wanted to change her appearance to fit the American beauty standards of the time. He suggested reshaping her eyebrows and even changing her name, but Bergman refused. She had been cast for her talent, and she insisted on staying true to herself. This decision would define her career and set her apart in an industry where reinvention was common. Her Hollywood debut was a success. Critics praised her ability to convey deep emotion with subtle expressions rather than exaggerated gestures. American audiences were drawn to her authenticity, and her quiet strength became one of her trademarks. Even though she spoke little English at the time, she delivered a compelling performance that proved language was no barrier for true talent. By 1942, she had secured her place in film history with Casablanca. Playing Ilse Lund, opposite Humphrey Bogart, she became part of one of the most beloved films of all time. The story of love and sacrifice during World War II resonated with audiences, but it was Bergman's performance that gave the film its emotional weight. She portrayed a woman torn between past and present, love and duty. Her chemistry with Bogart made every moment feel real. The line, "Here's looking at you, kid," became legendary, partly because of the way she brought depth and longing to every glance. In 1944, she took on an entirely different challenge in Gaslight, a psychological thriller directed by George Cukor. She played Paula Alquist Anton, a woman manipulated by her husband into believing she was losing her mind. The film was so powerful that the term gaslighting is still used today to describe psychological manipulation. Bergman's performance was intense yet restrained. She captured Paula's fear and confusion without overacting, making her descent into paranoia feel real. This role earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress, marking a major milestone in her career. Bergman also formed a remarkable collaboration with Alfred Hitchcock, starring in 3 of his films. In Spellbound, 1945, she played Dr. Constance Peterson, a psychoanalyst caught in a mystery involving amnesia and murder. The film's dream sequence, designed by Salvador Dali, made it visually unforgettable. But Bergman's performance grounded the surreal story in real emotion. In Notorious, 1946, she starred opposite Cary Grant as Alicia Huberman, an undercover agent torn between love and duty. Her performance combined elegance and intensity, making it one of Hitchcock's finest films. Later, in Under Capricorn, 1949, she explored the psychological depth of a troubled woman in 19th century Australia. These films showed her ability to adapt to different genres while maintaining her signature authenticity. By the time she won her first Oscar, she was already one of Hollywood's most respected actresses. The Gaslight win confirmed what critics and audiences already knew. She wasn't just a star, she was a performer who could bring depth to any role. The New York Journal-American called her one of the finest actresses in filmdom, a statement few could argue with. Beyond her performances, Bergman also reshaped Hollywood's beauty standards. In an era where actresses were expected to wear heavy makeup and alter their appearances, she refused to conform. She declined to dye her hair or reshape her eyebrows, despite studio pressure. She wore minimal makeup, often using only a touch of mascara or eyeliner. Her natural beauty became part of her appeal. Even Cary Grant once remarked on how confident she seemed without relying on cosmetics. Though she made small adjustments, like shaving a centimeter off her hairline to create a more balanced forehead, she never strayed from her true self. This quiet defiance resonated with audiences, especially women who saw her as proof that authenticity could be just as captivating as glamour. She proved that beauty wasn't about excess. It was about confidence and individuality. Ingrid Bergman married Swedish dentist and neurosurgeon Dr. Petter Lindström in 1937. She was 21 and he was 30. A year later, on September 20th, 1938, they had a daughter, Friedel Pia Lindström. At the time, Bergman was already gaining recognition in Swedish cinema. Soon, Hollywood noticed her talent, and she left Sweden to pursue bigger opportunities. At first, Lindström stayed behind with Pia, but in 1940, he moved to Rochester, New York, to study medicine at the University of Rochester. Eventually, he and Pia joined Bergman in California as her Hollywood career soared. Lindström took on the role of her manager, handling her contracts and finances. But as her fame grew, their marriage suffered. Bergman was constantly working, traveling, and chasing new roles. Lindström wanted a stable family life. He felt overshadowed and frustrated. Their marriage lasted over a decade, but it was far from happy. Bergman's passion was acting, and she refused to give it up. Lindström resented her long absences and the way her career always came first. In 1950, their relationship collapsed when Bergman fell in love with Italian director Roberto Rossellini. She left Lindström for him, setting off a scandal that shook Hollywood. The divorce was messy. Lindström fought for custody of Pia, and the battle dragged on until 1957 when Pia turned 18. He never forgave Bergman. He called her selfish and accused her of abandoning their daughter. Even years later, when Bergman wrote about him in her autobiography, she never called him by his first name. To her, he was always Dr. Lindström. Bergman's affair with Rossellini changed everything. It started in 1949 when she sent him a letter praising his work and suggesting they collaborate. Rossellini was famous for his Neorealist films, which were raw and emotional, completely different from the polished Hollywood movies Bergman starred in. He cast her in Stromboli, and during filming, their professional relationship turned into something deeper. The problem was that both were married. The affair became public, and soon after, Bergman became pregnant. On February 2, 1950, she gave birth to Roberto Ingmar Rossellini. Fans who had adored her for playing saints and noble women felt betrayed. The backlash was immediate. Religious groups called for boycotts of Stromboli, and theaters refused to show it. Hate mail flooded in. Some letters were prayers asking for her redemption. Others were death threats. The scandal escalated when Senator Edwin C. Johnson spoke out against Bergman on the Senate floor. On March 14, 1950, he called her a powerful influence for evil and accused her of destroying the sanctity of marriage. He even proposed legislation that would let the government ban films based on the morality of their creators. The attack was extreme, but it reflected the outrage many Americans felt. Bergman had been one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. Now, she was seen as a disgrace. Hollywood turned its back on her. She was blacklisted from the industry and banned from appearing on popular television programs like The Ed Sullivan Show. Ed Sullivan himself wanted to bring her on, but CBS executives refused. Public outrage continued to grow. Hate mail flooded in, calling her un-American and ungodly. Some letters attacked her for being Swedish, others for being with an Italian. Just 2 years earlier, she had played Joan of Arc, and now she was treated like an outcast. With no future left in Hollywood, she made a dramatic choice. In 1950, she moved to Italy to be with Rossellini and work on his films. Her career changed overnight. Gone were the glamorous Hollywood productions. Instead, she embraced Italian neorealism, a raw style of filmmaking that focused on everyday struggles. Their first film together, Stromboli, told the story of a displaced Lithuanian woman trying to survive on a remote volcanic island. It failed in America, but won the Rome Prize for Cinema. Over the next few years, Bergman starred in Europa 51, 1952, and Journey to Italy, 1954, both of which explored deep emotional and existential themes. In Europa 51, she played a wealthy woman who dedicates her life to helping others after her son's death. The film sparked controversy for its portrayal of unconventional religious themes and hints of communism. It was censored in several countries. Despite the struggles at the box office, these films became highly influential. Directors like Jean-Luc Godard and Federico Fellini later credited them as inspirations for their own work. Rossellini's way of directing was unlike anything she had experienced. He abandoned traditional Hollywood methods. There were no detailed scripts, no makeup artists, no rehearsed performances. He forced her to act with raw emotion, reacting naturally to real-life situations. This gave their films a unique realism, but also frustrated audiences who were used to polished productions. Even in Italy, life was not easy. The scandal still followed her, and her career in Hollywood seemed completely over. She was also isolated in her personal life. Her divorce from Lindström had been difficult, leaving her estranged from her daughter Pia for long periods. Even in Rossellini's world, she often felt like an outsider. But the biggest challenge was her relationship with Rossellini himself. While their films were groundbreaking, their marriage was filled with problems. Rossellini was controlling. He made most of the decisions about her career and personal life, limiting her interactions with people outside their close circle. He wanted her to focus only on his projects, keeping her away from other directors and actors. Things fell apart in the late 1950s when Rossellini had an affair with Bengali screenwriter Sonali Dasgupta during a film project in India. Their marriage, already strained, could not survive this betrayal. In 1957, they divorced. Despite the heartbreak, Bergman did not see these years as a failure. She later said that working with Rossellini changed her as an actress. He had pushed her into unfamiliar territory, and even though it was difficult, it helped her grow. Their children, including Isabella Rossellini, later described their mother as fearless during this period. Ingrid Bergman's return to Hollywood in Anastasia, 1956, was nothing short of remarkable. After 7 years away, she stepped back into the spotlight and reminded the world why she had once been one of the most beloved actresses in cinema. In 1956, 20th Century Fox took a chance. They cast her in Anastasia, a drama directed by Anatoly Litvak, based on a Broadway play about a woman who may or may not be the last surviving daughter of Tsar Nicholas II. The role was complex. She played Anna Korev, an amnesiac who is trained to impersonate Anastasia Romanov. Bergman delivered a performance filled with both strength and vulnerability. Critics took notice. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times called her portrayal beautifully molded and said she deserved an Academy Award. Audiences embraced her once again. The film became a commercial success. That same year, at the 29th Academy Awards, Bergman won her second Oscar for Best Actress. Since she was in Europe at the time, her friend Cary Grant accepted the award on her behalf. His speech made it clear that Hollywood had forgiven her. More than that, they wanted her back. She also won a Golden Globe and a New York Film Critics Circle Award. The industry had once condemned her, but now they were celebrating her return. Her comeback proved that talent could outshine controversy. Anastasia wasn't just another film in her career. It was the moment she reclaimed her place in Hollywood. The same public that had turned against her now admired her resilience. The success of the film showed how much audiences still wanted to see her on screen. She didn't just return, she thrived. Over the next 2 decades, she continued to take on roles that challenged her as an actress. In Murder on the Orient Express, 1974, she played Greta Olsen, a Swedish missionary caught in a murder investigation. It was a small role in a film filled with stars like Sean Connery and Lauren Bacall, yet she stood out. She spoke in Swedish-accented English, adding authenticity to the character. Critics praised her subtle, emotional performance. The Academy awarded her a 3rd Oscar, this time for Best Supporting Actress. Her final film role came in Autumn Sonata, 1978, directed by Ingmar Bergman. She played Charlotte Andergast, a famous pianist who struggles to reconnect with her estranged daughter, played by Liv Ullmann. The film focused on their tense conversations, filled with years of unspoken pain. Bergman's performance was quiet but powerful. Every word, every glance carried weight. She earned nominations for Best Actress at the Golden Globes and BAFTA Awards. It was one of the most emotionally raw performances of her career. Ingrid Bergman met Robert Capa in June 1945 in Paris. World War II had just ended. She was there to entertain American soldiers. He was already famous for his war photography. His images of the battlefield had made him a legend. She was married to Peter Lindström, a Swedish-American neurosurgeon, but the marriage was strained. Kappa was different from anyone she had ever met. He was fearless, always chasing danger, and full of charm. She was drawn to him immediately. Their relationship lasted 2 years. It was passionate, but filled with secrecy. In December 1945, Kappa followed Bergman to Hollywood, hoping to stay close to her. He took a short-term job at American International Pictures. Bergman thought about leaving her husband to marry him, but Kappa didn't want to be tied down. He loved his freedom. Marriage didn't fit into his way of life. This difference eventually pushed them apart. In the summer of 1946, Kappa left Hollywood and traveled to Turkey, ending their romance. For Bergman, the affair was an emotional turning point. She divorced Lindstrom in 1950 and soon married Italian director Roberto Rossellini. Kappa continued his work as a photographer, capturing images from war zones around the world. In 1947, he co-founded Magnum Photos, a now famous photography agency. His life ended tragically in 1954 when he stepped on a landmine while covering the First Indochina War. Their love story didn't just fade away. It found its way into cinema. Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window was said to be inspired by their relationship, an artistic tribute to the photographer who had once captured Bergman's heart. Though brief, their affair remained one of the most intriguing chapters of her life. A few years before meeting Kappa, Bergman had another intense romance. In the summer of 1942, during the filming of For Whom the Bell Tolls, she and Gary Cooper fell for each other. The movie itself was special. Ernest Hemingway had written the novel with Bergman in mind for the role of Maria. Cooper played Robert Jordan, Maria's lover. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, and it wasn't just acting. Both were married, Bergman to Lindstrom, Cooper to Veronica Balfe. But their attraction was impossible to ignore. According to Cooper's daughter, he was deeply in love with Bergman. Bergman later admitted she had strong feelings for him too. Their affair lasted about a year, but ended as quickly as it began. Once filming was over, Bergman suddenly distanced herself. Cooper was heartbroken. He later said that no woman had ever loved him the way she did. Yet after the film wrapped, he couldn't even reach her by phone. Their emotions played out on screen. In one unforgettable scene, Maria nervously asks Robert how to kiss. The moment was filled with tenderness, mirroring what was happening between them in real life. Their romance was brief, but it stayed with Cooper for the rest of his life. It also revealed something about Bergman, how deeply she connected with the people she worked with, yet how easily she could walk away. Her relationship with her children was complicated. She was often criticized for putting her career ahead of her family, and there was truth to that. Her eldest daughter, Pia Lindstrom, born in 1938 during Bergman's first marriage to Petter Lindstrom, felt the distance the most. In 1949, Bergman's affair with Italian director Roberto Rossellini changed everything. The scandal led to divorce, exile from Hollywood, and years of separation from Pia. It was a painful time. Pia later described their relationship as loving but distant. She admired her mother, but struggled with the fact that she had not been there when it mattered most. Bergman's second marriage to Rossellini brought more children, Roberto Ingmar, born in 1950, and twin daughters Isabella and Isotta Ingrid, born in 1952. Their early years were chaotic, caught in the aftermath of the scandal. Despite this, their experience with their mother was different. By the time they were old enough to understand, Bergman was making an effort to be present. Isabella later spoke about how her mother worked to rebuild relationships with all of her children. By the 1970s, Bergman had reconnected with Pia and strengthened her bond with her younger children. She did not make excuses for the past. She simply tried to be there in the present. Isabella saw this as an act of love and resilience. Even as Bergman focused on family, her dedication to acting never faded. In 1982, she gave her final performance in A Woman Called Golda, portraying Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir. It was one of the most powerful roles of her career. She was already battling advanced breast cancer, a fight that had started in 1974. The disease had spread, and she was in constant pain, but she refused to stop. She poured everything she had into the role. The television miniseries chronicled Meir's life, from the founding of Israel to her historic 1977 meeting with Egyptian President Anwar Sadat. Despite her illness, Bergman remained focused. Crew members later recalled how she never let her suffering show. Her performance earned her a posthumous Emmy and a Golden Globe, proving that even at the end, she was unmatched in her craft. Just 4 months after filming, Bergman passed away on August 29, 1982, her 67th birthday. The timing gave her life a haunting symmetry. After nearly a decade of fighting cancer, she spent her final days in London, surrounded by those closest to her. It was the end of a remarkable life, but her legacy was unshaken. Over 5 decades, she won 3 Academy Awards, 2 Emmys, 4 Golden Globes, and a Tony. She became one of only 4 actresses in history to win 3 Oscars. Her films, Casablanca, Gaslight, Notorious, Anastasia, remain timeless, a testament to her ability to captivate audiences. More than awards or roles, though, she was a woman who refused to be defined by others. She defied Hollywood's expectations, survived scandal, and returned stronger than ever. Her children carried her legacy forward. Pia became a respected journalist. Isabella built a career in film and fashion. Documentaries like Ingrid Bergman, in her own words and countless retrospectives, continue to celebrate her work. Decades after her passing, Ingrid Bergman is still a legend. Her story, full of triumph, struggle, and resilience, remains unforgettable.